The Protestant Reformation. Background to the Reformation. In the previous unit, we saw the awesome power of Charles V and the vast Habsburg dominion. However, the biggest dilemma of Charles V wasn't the Valois challenges of Francis I. It wasn't the advancing threat of Suleiman the Magnificent and the Ottoman Turks. It wasn't the near continental alliance against him. It was the preachings of a former monk and priest in Wittenberg, Germany. The Protestant crisis began with a challenge to the religious authority of the Pope. Debates over the Pope's power had occurred before, but in a state of political chaos, coupled with numerous social changes, technological advancements, and general abuses of the Church, Protestantism consumed much of Europe. Prior to Martin Luther, there were men that were essential to the initial questioning of the Catholic Church and to the formulation of the early ideas that informed the backbone of the Reformation. Heresy was, of course, not a new problem, and the Church had formed the Inquisition to root it out. But two widespread movements, Lollardy and Hussitism, in the 13 and 1400s, posed new threats. English Lollardy, coming from the nickname for the uneducated, which actually came to simply mean heretic, was a product of the Oxford theologian John Wycliffe, whose disgust with the clergy's corruption led him to attack papal authority and medieval Christian beliefs and practices. Wycliffe alleged that there was no basis in Scripture for papal claims of political power, and advocated that the popes be stripped of both their power and their property. At one point, he even calls the Pope the Antichrist. Wycliffe espoused that the Bible as man's sole authority. Thus, it should be made available in vernacular languages, which he translated into English into 1381. Rejecting all practices not mentioned in the Bible, he condemned pilgrimages, the veneration of saints, and a whole series of rituals and rites that had developed in the medieval church. Wycliffe, before the Inquisition could reach him, died in 1384. Hussitism. A marriage between the royal families in England and Bohemia enabled the Lollard ideas to spread to a group of Czech reformers under Wycliffe follower and University of Prague Chancellor John Huss. He took Wycliffe's ideas further and urged the elimination of the worldliness and corruption of the clergy. Huss's objections fell on receptive ears, since the Catholic Church owned an incredible amount of land in Bohemia, and the Czech nobility were open to his ideas of a Czech clergy in Bohemia. The Council of Constance called Huss in, promising him safe conduct. This gave Huss the idea that he would be discussing his beliefs. Instead, he was promptly arrested, condemned as a heretic, and burned at the stake. What was not expected was the rebellion that it caused in Bohemia. The Hussite Wars were a large source of trouble for the Holy Roman Empire for 20 years. Added to the ideas of Wycliffe and Huss were Christian humanists like Erasmus and Sir Thomas More, who we've already discussed. The Catholic clergy on the eve of the Reformation was extremely corrupt as well. As heads of the church, the popes of the Renaissance became much more interested in their political and economic power. The manner in which the Renaissance popes pursued their own interests, especially their use of open bloodshed and deceit, was shocking. We've already discussed the famous Alexander VI, known for his debauchery and corruption. Julius II, the warrior pope, famously led his armies into Bologna, to which the present Erasmus replied, "How, O bishop, standing in the room of the apostles, dare you teach the people the things that pertain to the war?" This, coupled with their intensive need for money, since they were not hereditary monarchs, popes came to rely on the practice of nepotism, giving their family members preferential treatment. Sixtus IV, for example, made 5 of his nephews cardinals. The greatest patron of the arts, the amount of money also spent on the arts were staggering. The greatest patron of the arts was Leo X, a member of the Medici family. The son of Lorenzo the Magnificent, he was made an archbishop at the age of 12 and a cardinal at 13. Another abuse of the clergy was the practice of pluralism, in which the clergy members would hold several offices. This led to high levels of absenteeism. Instead of leading their parishioners, they collected revenues from all their parishes and hired a poor priest, many times ignorant and illiterate, to fill local churches. Clerical drunkenness, gambling, and indulgence in food and dress were also frequent criticisms. In his later years, Julius II saw the need for reform. Between 1512 and 1517, he summoned an ecumenical council, which recommended higher standards of education for clergy and instruction of the common people. It also sought to eliminate many of the problems of the corruption. Julius was much too late, however. Difficulties were already brewing in Germany.